Hello and a very warm welcome back to the garden. Today I'm going to show you my kind of different approach to harvesting. This is very much an abundant polyculture. And rather than going and harvesting for my food, I go and forage through the garden, and I want to show you some of the really interesting things that are happening, maybe give you some ideas and some interesting plant combinations that have happened by accident because I've taken a very experimental approach, which is very different to how this garden was last year. So the first thing that spotted is that there are a couple of raspberries, but what I want to talk about first is this is a globe artichoke, mainly in its first year, and I've got the first globe here ready to harvest. It is such a delicacy, and so that's going to be the first thing I'm going to enjoy. So that is going to be absolutely delicious. Now, around me here, there is so much food. I'm coming to the raspberries in a second, but at the bottom of my feet, I have some mint. So that is absolutely delicious. And then, kind of hiding, I've got tons of rhubarb. Like everywhere around me is food. I've got peas. And then, of course, the first of the autumn raspberries are starting to come out, and these are going to be absolutely delicious. So this garden is trying to embrace as much diversity as possible, and there are occasions where I will grow a bulk of something like potatoes or leeks, and that's fine. But wherever possible, I try and integrate as many different things as possible. And here, so there's a lot going on. I've got some beautiful dahlias, which I'm actually going to cut a couple to dry, just because they are looking so lovely. So look at those beauties, put those in there. And then beneath me here, I've got forage giant chard, which in my last video I gave a nice little shout out. And it really is an absolute giant. And really tasty, so I can grab like a couple of those leaves. And what I do whenever I come to the garden and I'm thinking, what shall I have for dinner? I actually love this wild jungle look. Yes, okay, right, it isn't as efficient as, say, creating things in blocks and making sure I don't have things spilling over into the pathways, but it's so much more fun. And it's that kind of joy that makes me like, every time I come to the garden, I'm like, oh, what's happening? And I've got squash and things growing under here, and like, you'd have no idea that right behind me is a tomato. Things are hiding everywhere. I can also just reach down, wait for this, got a beetroot. So whilst it looks really wild, this is true food abundance. And for me, with permaculture, it's kind of taking certain different principles and realizing that there's no rule book. I don't care about companion planting. I think a lot of it is a little bit faddy, to be honest. So people are like, oh no, you can't grow that plant with this. I just disregard all of that. I focus on soil health. I focus on when I'm putting in plants, how they kind of work in terms of spacing. I'm like, well, is there just about enough space? Like putting those asparagus peas back there. Yeah, they can just grow out. And it creates this amazing kind of patchwork quilt of flavour and colour. What always strikes me is, and it happens every year, but I can sometimes come to the garden and think, oh, there's not really much food. But as soon as you actually get in and you start looking at things, you realise there's a lot. Now, these plants are not perfect. This here is Australian tree cabbage, one of my absolute staples. It's got a few little holes in it, but at least I know it's organic and it's helping insects. In fact, there's been a lot of insect life, especially in the last month. It's like I felt a real boom. And there's a lot of things happening under here. I've got a courgette plant. One courgette plant is more than enough for one person. And then I've got rat's tail radish coming through. Now, this area here is particularly exciting. There is a lot going on. I've got Greek gigantes beans. I've got runner beans. And the runner beans are coming on nicely. And this is one of the coolest things ever. You can eat runner bean flowers. They just have the most like lovely, refreshing, beany taste. So I recommend that. And then up here, I've also got a squash that is starting to grow. And it's the same squash in that bed, and it's growing in between the potatoes. I don't mind. And then, of course, Raffles High black mints, and there's a little calendula underneath, so that'll be actually quite nice for a salad. So behind me here, I've got this amazing nasturtium, sending off lots of nice flowers. I'll be thinking about nasturtium is that essentially the whole plant is edible. So the leaves are edible, the flowers are edible, and then the seed heads nice and edible. I'm just going to grab a couple of those that I can slice up nicely as a topping. In the front here, I'm actually going to do my first like mini harvest of Cavolo Nero kale. This was where I was growing some potatoes. Actually, I took out the potatoes, and then I've done a bit of a mixed medley planting. And so I'm going to take just a couple of leaves there and one leaf from here. I don't want to take too much because all of these leaves are photosynthesizing and helping. But one of the kind of the core things about having a garden like this, and it really links into health. It's like, you want to be healthy, you want to have as much diversity and variety of plants to eat. And rather than worrying about, say, doing your 5 a day and trying to get the right quantities of that, what I can do is a right medley of 20 to 30 different plants in a single mealtime if I wanted to. I'll give you a very quick example of how that can quickly kind of build up. So here, I've got peas growing. So pea shoots is one example. I've got sisho growing. Sisho is another example. This here is a dwarf runner bean, which will be interesting to see what happens. This here is dill, so I can add the dill in, and then there's a couple of like little beetroot leaves, and already like that, I'm quickly getting that beautiful diversity. It's like the idea of eating the rainbow. I've got a little lettuce here, so I could grab a couple of like little lettuce leaves, and it is simple as that. Now here is a really interesting kind of semi-wild planting scheme. I put in a nasturtium and a Vietnamese coriander, and I've got this bronze fennel, which is growing really, really nicely. And this is all like a mix, and what I've noticed is that the Vietnamese coriander is almost using the bronze fennel as a little bit of a structure to go upwards. And we've got the cascading effect of the nasturtium, and the nasturtium is actually growing out the other side of the door, which I quite like. And this is one of my absolute favourite beds here. I just wanted a bed of colour and insect life. And so we've got the Monarda or bergamot, 2 different types growing. This Korean agastache, it just smells absolutely amazing. And then I've got yarrow, this stunning kind of red yarrow, different cosmoses and calendula. And I've got a little zinnia here, a little orange zinnia, pink zinnia. There is so much happening within this bed. And there's a lot of things tucked in and happening behind. I've got a little bit of amaranth growing, so I might want to add a few of these amaranth leaves in. But it's keeping me kind of, in terms of a permaculture garden, I think it's so important to have not just edible polyculture, but also visual polyculture. And so incorporating flowers within the garden and ones that have edible purposes, like if you wanted to, you can eat the petals of zinnia. They're a little bit bitter, so use it sparingly. But again, it's just giving you options. And then at the back here, which is big, I think, I've got a thornless blackberry, which is nice. And that's a good one. Sometimes they're a little sour, but that's looking good. You want to see what's happening in here. I'm going to start to make my way. I've got the hotbed here, lots of spaghetti squash, jumbo pink banana squash. This is actually quite interesting. This is where I've got some sweet peas growing. And this is a perennialized runner bean in a sense. So I managed to overwinter the tubers and I've been harvesting the runner bean, but it's also growing in between the sweet peas, which I quite like that. I quite like to see that. Behind is a Japanese wineberry. And I'm just making my way through. I've got Aztec broccoli, and yes, it's a little bit of a pain making my way through, but it is a lot of fun. Now, in the back here, this tree spinach, I actually cooked it the other day when making some lunch, and it's just a really nice flavour. I think this is going to be, for me moving forward, one of my bulk greens in a way, even though it's got this beautiful magenta tip. It's going to be one of my bulk kind of crops for for greens that I'm going to eat. And then in the back here, I've just let it go into kind of just crazy polyculture city. I've also got some Verbena boreensis growing here just for the butterflies and various different perennials. I'm not going to focus too much on the perennials today, but in the front here, I have a massive angelica. This is yacon that is growing through. And then I'm also growing this purple tree spinach, which actually will be quite nice to add to the mix. So growing all of these, and I've got this abundance, and there's so many different squash hiding underneath my feet. And this is getting bigger. And then in there, I've got oca and Chinese artichoke. And yeah, it is absolutely, it looks like chaos, but it's design chaos. Sometimes I will see something maybe growing too far or too much over something. So like this angelica leaf at the bottom is kind of inhibiting the yacon. So I'm just going to cut that and basically chop and drop just to give a little bit of extra space for this yacon to really thrive. So here in the polytunnel, finally, this had a lot of slug issues. One of the things that I put down was strulch, which does make a really nice effect, but everything's grown. I've just been filling in some extra things. This is either amaranth, I think this is amaranth, but I've been planting some callaloo as well. This is one cucumber plant that I've trained into a set of 3. I've got some beautiful cucumbers and I've been having a lot of beautiful ones. Behind here hiding is an aubergine and then a cornichon, or however you say it, cucumber. The tomatoes are going great guns. It's taken them quite a while with all of my tomatoes, both the ones that I've done as normal cordons and these wild ones. Like this here is one plant and trained it into 2 black strawberry, looking really good. And what I've started to do is clear the base and underplant tomatoes. Now I've been chatting about underplanting tomatoes in my latest journal, but the idea is if I've got all of this space at the bottom, I don't want to be redundant. I always want to think about how can I maximize it. So I put in some kind of low growing plants just to make sure that the airflow remains nice. But really happy with this. And the little winner for me, whilst to see the melon starting to grow, is something called Greek basil. Now the squash is growing so well that it's decided to run a few meters and escape from the kitchen garden, which is quite funny. And this is the other side of the thornless blackberry. If you want to see something pretty cool, this is a cordon tomato and this one as well. And we put a runner bean in, and the runner bean has grown up through, well, actually up the string, missing most of the tomato plant, and over the top. So here I can have both the runner beans as a harvest and also the tomatoes. So here I've got over 20 different edible things that I can enjoy. And that very much is that kind of forage mentality of going around the garden, seeing what's ready, seeing what's in its prime. I'll now take this home and use this to kind of design a meal. I'll probably group different things together, like, you know, the salad ingredients and then the root veg and things and the leafy greens. But it is so simple, it is so abundant, and this is the kind of food that you can get out every single day. If you want to learn more and go to the place where I'm diving much deeper into permaculture, then check out my Substack, where I am also releasing the occasional recipe. I'm going rogue, so I'll see you there.